What's up, you guys? It's Jason from RPM, and today I'm going to be showing you and walking you through how to install your 17 to 19 Can-Am X3 high flow airbox intake. Airbox intake is the key word there because we do offer a high flow intake that eliminates your airbox for this model also. But for this model specifically, this is the airbox intake. It's probably the most common one for guys who are just, all around end users. The reason this one is so important, why it only fits 17 to 19 models, is in 2020, Can-Am changed their airbox design. We also offer a high flow silicone intake for that model, but this one, the airbox intake, it's tiny. That's what your stock one looks like. This is what it's going to look like when you have the RPM intake done. So it's not just a billet piece, there's a silicone one also, but that's a huge difference. The silicone, you can see what we've done. Huge difference. You're gonna move some air. How to install this? It's super easy. Once you have the airbox off the car, the one thing we wanna make sure people have are a way to cut this plastic flange out of the car. We use an oscillating tool, but guys have done it with a hot knife, any multi-tool, or even like a Sawzall, you can kind of come in. The one thing that we always tell guys is just make sure you don't hit the airbox itself when you're cutting. You can cut all this black off right here, this section. You just want to kind of make a pie cut, and then you can squeeze it and pull it out of there. You get the cut close to the airbox, you can kind of tap it with a flathead screwdriver and a hammer, and it'll just break, and this thing just comes apart. When it's done, it can look something like this. And essentially, you're wanting this thing to be able to flex like this, and you can squeeze it and pull it out of the factory airbox. That's kind of what we're going for here. So you've seen the difference of our intake versus the OEM one. I know that, we're not the first ones to come out with an intake like this. We just did it the right way. So this is what you're gonna see a lot of on the market, is a billet piece like this. Huge dead ends of air, sharp corners. The RPM is gonna look something like this. It's smooth flowing, everything's radiused, air flows correctly, air turbulence is correct. I mean, we'll kind of just let it speak for itself here. Like, one is not like the other. So that kind of shows you our intake, what's different about it, and how it's better than the factory airbox. So moving on to the installation part, I'm gonna show you how we cut this away, kind of where we clock this port, where we clock the breather valve. So if you're running a catch can, you're gonna cap this anyways, but if not, if you're recirculating back, first thing is we're gonna recommend the RPM catch can when you're doing this intake. But if you're not, we'll kind of show you which direction to clock this. Essentially, the factory direction is what we're aiming for. Even with this mat port, you have a wide range of where it can actually be, and this hose still reach. So it doesn't have to be exact. So once the billet piece is inserted into the airbox, it is a little bit tough to turn, but it is possible. Yeah, I want to show you how to get this done. So jumping to this airbox, I'll be honest with you, I only had this hose connected because I wanted to be able to show you guys everything. We leave all of this assembled on the car when we remove the airbox, and you're just gonna cut these little single ear clamps and kind of twist. You just don't want to break anything. That's kind of the important part, all right? So on the car, this isn't an easy task, but what I like to do is kind of get the wire snips behind this little ear right here. Even on the car, I just pull them out. With ours, you're gonna get all new German ear clamps, so silicone safe clamps, and you're gonna get a new clamp for this. While on the car, if you throw an overboost code, you've damaged this valve. It is an extremely fragile port right here. Guys damage them just adjusting their wastegate pressure all the time. This valve gets damaged. So we always tell guys, be very careful when you're working around this, pulling these lines off, that you don't, yank and pop this plastic piece. This thing breaking, we've seen them break just on cars in normal use. Like, it's just kind of a weak design. But moving on to the airbox, this is kind of where you're at. We're gonna dump the air filter out of this thing, kind of get it gutted. So what we're going for is kind of a little pie cut out of this thin area. I'm gonna hack off this neck, and then I'm gonna make a little pie cut, and I'm gonna come through, maybe even to the bottom, and make this little cut. Just enough that it can fracture when you tap it with a screwdriver, and it kind of starts to disintegrate at that point. You can squeeze it and pull it out of there. The airbox is actually a graphite plastic. It's super strong. This is not, so it'll kind of crumble when you start taking it apart. So don't be afraid to kind of manhandle the airbox itself while you break this plastic out. You'll be fine. So we got the neck off. Now I'm gonna come in and make those relief cuts I talked about. I might even do like a relief cut in here. That way with the plastic can kind of flex a little better. All right, so I've got a couple relief cuts made. And honestly with this, the more cuts, the better. Just don't hit the airbox. The more cuts you make, the easier this thing will kind of just come right out of there. And you can see as I hit that, it just shocks the plastic, breaks it away. That's kind of what we're going for. Now that we've got a whole section exposed, you can go through and make more cuts. Like I said, the more cuts you make like that, the easier it's going to be to get this thing to fall out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and actually make one more cut. Voila. You can kind of see what we were talking about, those relief cuts. This thing's able to flex out of there. No damage to the airbox. This is just a formed piece of plastic, so what I like to do, this isn't required, is I kind of just like take a Scotch-Brite 3M pad or whatever you've got, even like a sanding block. I just like to clean this up, make sure there's no dirt, debris, super clean surface. That's what we like to see. Smooth. Our intake, we seal the billet to the plastic with an EPDM foam, way better than the factory one. You remove the factory one, you might get a little nervous. You see some like dirt buildup and stuff in there. It does seal pretty good. We'll give them that. Ours just seals better. So that's kind of your reassurance there. We're gonna clean this area up. A little trick is if you have a heat gun or you want to use a torch, carefully heat this plastic up before you insert it, and then always lubricate this area. It's okay if you get a little WD-40 or whatever on the foam. We're gonna set it in there like that. When I'm installing these, what I'm aiming for is kind of just a little bit off of this area. If you had the billet port, say right here, or even right here, all the way down to there, I mean, that rubber hose, the factory hose, it has enough move that you can go just about anywhere with this. So I like to just set it kind of right about like there. You have a lot of play there. So installing this, again, I'm gonna warm this up a little bit. I'm gonna lubricate this up a little bit. And then what we're gonna do is I kind of aim to push in one side first, the other side. It does go in tough, don't get me wrong. You can use a little rubber mallet to press on it or just kind of push down really hard. You're gonna use some force. It's sealing itself, locking itself onto plastic and squeezing this foam at the same time. It's how the factory one's built, it's how ours is built. So just don't be afraid to really press on this thing. You're essentially pushing this barb past the plastic. So if you're going in at an angle, it'll fall in one area and then push in the other area. Then I like to go around and kind of just tap it to make sure it's seated. But once you've got it in there, it ain't coming out. All right, guys, so this is in there. We're gonna make sure the foam is all in place. It is. Just kind of keep an eye on that foam when you're pressing it down, that it's not like rolled over or anything like that. As you can see, the rubber mallet, it works really well. We don't like to use a metal hammer, obviously, but if you have a dead blow hammer, they work even better. This is a rubber mallet. It goes in super easy. Just kind of one side, it'll drop right into place. And then it's sealed in there nice and tight. The EPDM foam is sealing the whole unit, and you're ready to get this thing back in the car. Once you have it in the car, again, this port is just for the crankcase ventilation or your catch can. You're just gonna orient it in the same area. If you have a catch can, it really doesn't matter where you have it, but if you're using it for the crankcase ventilation, you're aiming for about the same area it was before. Your factory hose is still gonna be there, so you have somewhere to go. You know, if you're a 1/4 inch off, it's really not that big of a deal. You're gonna use the supplied hardware or German ear clamps. From there, you're just gonna reinstall like it was before. Slide this end on the turbo, this end on the airbox, and reinstall everything. Hook up your line. We got supplied clamp for that. This isn't a bad install, guys. It's super easy, super clean. You can pick these up on rpmsidebyside.com or any of our dealers nationwide.